everybody playing the violins for Manti Te'o.
Like, don't be that
guy.
Come
on, dude. Come on.
Okay, here we go.
Brady, how is it the love of your life, but you never met her? I don't understand.
Okay, first off, I don't know because I can't relate with that. All right, I was never fond of a long distance relationship, but always would still try to go see that person whenever I had the chance. I think when you grow up in Hawaii, it's a different life when you're trying to get back and forth, and you probably have to be pretty affluent in order to do that, especially to South Bend, Indiana. During the time in college, which is supposedly how when they had met and all that. I think the relatable thing is, and the most relatable thing that I would took away from that whole thing, because everyone's always like, how could you not know? Like, how could you get fooled? How could you meet so many people when you are a celebrity, especially at that age when you're young, you got school.
And at that level.
When you're on the national stage, especially I remember coming back from my senior year, that 05 to 06, I couldn't go anywhere without someone recognize me as that person. And so when he decided to come back, when he came back, you can't help. But throughout even the course of your career, during at Notre Dame, as you build up, as you play as a freshman, it's a national brand. And you can't help but, want to help people, but also, you're reaching out to people, you send videos, you send all this stuff. If that whole thing started because he thought he had met someone, right? Which back then, it's hard for us to understand now because, everything's so accessible to us online. Back then, it wasn't. You could meet someone, or someone could say they had met you at an event, and you're like, oh, yeah, probably. And it'd be hard to look back and find out whether you actually were at that event with that person. Camera phones weren't prevalent. They started to become that, where most people had them, or a lot of people had them.
And he tried to FaceTime her. He did try to FaceTime him.
Oh, by the way, listen to the voicemails.
Right.
I was like, okay, that sounds like a girl.
And then the picture. The picture, that's what did it for me.
The dated picture was okay. If you were looking for, and by the way, let's just package this together. It is a very attractive young woman who supposedly went to Stanford.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, most people would be like, all right, that's probably something I want to pursue. And hey, I'm dialed in on football right now, and trust me, the academics are tough, so you don't have a ton of free time. I my high school spirit was down in Miami, Ohio, when I was going through college, so I'd go down to see her when I could, but it was tough with the schedule that you had to drive 4 hours down, 4 hours back. And so you start kind of putting together and going, okay, I could see back then, based on how the world operated, how that could potentially happen. And if he ended up having a relationship with someone who was there for him and spoke to him and helped encourage him and helped him through some tough times, was portrayed, I could see all that coming out. But, the tough part is how you handle it once you find out that everything you thought was a lie.
Jeez.
Which that's what I think makes this whole story really interesting. And I kind of figured he was going to say what he was going to say, at the Heisman and everything else, where you kind of have to go along with the company line at that point. I said this to you guys before we talked about this. Is that the moment you really go, hey, by the way, this girl that I thought was dead that I really cared about apparently is alive? Is that the moment before the Heisman Trophy where you say that?
And a guy.
Yeah. There were two things. Right. There were two things that kind of jumped up in my mind. One is, did he go that long without getting ass? Did he really go that long?
Okay, so that's where I feel like there's maybe some things that weren't technically
right.
That's where I'm like, okay.
That's the first conclusion I came to immediately. Wait, hold on, wait. But then I'm like, look, the dude is super ridiculously religious and spiritual, and that is a real thing. That's a real thing when you don't, put, a lot of weight on some of the things that people that don't carry those very strong spiritual and religious beliefs, what they do and how you handle things. I think that he was just, I think he was just gullible. But my here's the thing, though. My number 2 takeaway was the Soyapa. What was the
Tuiasosopo?
Tuiasosopo.
Just
Renaya Tuiasosopo.
One of the most selfish, self-centered, self-driven, like you name it, anything. One of the most selfish things that I have ever. And when I say self, I mean the most disgustingly selfish. Like, can you say diabolical?
Yeah.
Like, it is as and you know what really irritated me watching it is it was all about that person justifying things for themselves.
Yeah,
it was like always like, oh, I was just so glad. Like, you just told this dude in your other voice that you the person he loves died. You, so selfish, can't let him go. So you call back and say it's me. Like, you're tormenting this dude.
And by the way, I don't want to give away the spoiler because there's a development with Renaya, and so I don't want to give that detail away. But we'll just put it this way: some things have changed, and so this idea that and my favorite part of the whole thing is when Renaya's talking about the profile and is saying, look, it's when I made this profile, it's all my likes.
It's really me.
It's all my interests.
Not my picture.
It's all it's my interest. It's my favorite music. It's like that's
my
really
love.
I
loved
really
him.
Me. Yeah. Except not your photos and a wrong gender. That's the only thing. Other than that, it's all me.
That's a big detail.
What a scumbag. That's a scumbag thing to do.
No real culpability whatsoever.
Yeah.
Took no culpability. And could have really stopped this from really falling on Manti Te'o, who had to shoulder all of it.
That was one of the things I thought about, by the way, was like, all right.
It was really me.
I guess there's two ways of looking at it. If he never called back,
it would have been fine. Right?
Well, it would have been fine, but the Deadspin's article
still found it. Right.
They still would have found it.
And that was the only reason why the dude started tripping out in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
But I wonder if it would have had the impact on Manti the way it did. Because as Deadspin started to construct their article, and obviously they're an awful publication, so we've kind of seen the death of Deadspin over the course of, basically since that time. And look, and the worst part about that was, I mean, let's just be real about what it was. You had a young star in sports, right, who obviously was taken advantage of by a confused individual about where they were in their life. And then you had a publication in Deadspin, before getting all of the information, ran the story. And you could make the case that it ruined both Manti Te'o and Renaya Tuiasosopo, or however they're identifying themselves now. It ruined their lives. Like literally, because they didn't have all the facts, and they weren't actually patient enough. Tim Burko, I think is the guy's name, right?
Yeah.
And Jack, whatever. Because they weren't patient enough to actually get all of the facts, because they wanted so badly to make ESPN look dumb. That was their objective. They talked about it. Because that was their entire motivation. They then ruined two people's lives. And now come back, they're just sitting down talking about it like it's okay. They should be sued. There should be some sort of defamation that's taken place, because as we saw from the media outlets, and by the way, some of those media people work for Fox. Some of those media people work for other publications. People ran wild with the speculation.
Yeah.
Legitimately. I mean, questioning the guy's sexual orientation.
Yep.
There were teams questioning him and whether or not he should not be a first-round pick off that
hurt
dropped the second round.
It hurt his draft stock,
This
right?
whole thing costed Manti Te'o his career.
Millions.
Millions. Listen, I'm telling you, it costed him his career, because if you're paying attention to what he says, he forgave himself and he forgave the person. But I don't think he's ever started fully trusting himself. I still think he's I know this sounds crazy. My spirit went out for him, man. I connected with him. Like I felt like, man, like he's still fighting this. He's still battling this right now today. So you're talking about when he said, like, this is what made me who I am. Like, I'm like, that's my Buckus brother right there. I know exactly what he's talking about.
Right.
That go down on all fours. I will bite your leg off. I will handle this business the way that I need to handle it. That is a mindset. That is a belief that you are the baddest thing moving out there on the field. If you lose that, you've lost it all. If you're not willing to take those chances unapologetically with absolutely no second thought whatsoever. I give 0 F's about anybody having a problem with how I'm out here being a warrior and I'm hunting. If you take that away from a player that plays the way that a Manti Te'o plays, you've taken away the essence of what made him what he is. And that costed him his career because he didn't trust himself. It's like, do I trust my decision here? That's crazy. Like, that is crazy as hell to me. You costed yourself a career because somebody stole from you the belief in yourself and the things that you do.
Yeah, but it was all her likes and interests and all that. You know, again, just the orientation and then the pictures. That was the only thing that was a lie. Other than that, it was all on the up and up. Yeah, what a
crazy, man.
What a bizarre story.
To that point, LaVar, like, think about the impact of everyone else in the locker room, and just how, like, this story really came about because that person, Renaya Tuiasosoba, was having a hard time identifying in this world, like with how they viewed themselves.
Yep.
But the problem is, because of the confusion or the I guess fear of what would come from trying to become the person they wanted to be, that then impacted the identity of Manti Te'o. If you think about when he got to the league now, because everyone's saying all this stuff about him, and it's like, yeah, I'm not that guy, but everyone thinks that. Or their imagination runs wild with whatever they want to think because there wasn't the whole story. And so now it's not even just what he thinks of himself. It's how everyone else identifies him because, as you know, when you're an alpha in that, especially on the defensive side of the ball, man.
He's the middle backer. He is the guy.
He's the guy.
He's the guy.
And now it's like, and when we just talked about him losing draft stock, are guys going to be able to follow him? I don't know, man. Like, that puts a lot of things in question. Like, he might have been questioning some things, but I think there's a lot of people out around him that are questioning him, which is the worst position you could be in the NFL. Like, I always say, when you see a man's confidence go in the NFL, his career is going to go shortly with him. Like, that's the one thing you can – I've seen so many players that were average at best, but they were so confident and maybe even cocky or even arrogant that they believed they could make every single play. And they played longer or were more successful because of that belief, because of that confidence, because they sure as hell didn't have the talent. But once that's taken away from you, man, that is it. That's a wrap. And I think there's no doubt this whole experience not only took away his own confidence, but I think the confidence that other people had in him as a player.
Sad, man.
Yeah. Wild story, man.
That's a wild story.
Just, I mean.
That's a wild one.
I can't. Have you ever known anybody who got I had a buddy who got catfished. And I knew, no, I swear to God, this is a true story. And it was different because it ended up, being, it was a girl, just not the pictures or profile that she sent over. But I remember it was all I'm watching this where they're talking about, well, he tried to FaceTime and it was blurry, or they tried to meet up but something else happened, or it was all the same tactics. It was the same thing. I remember him saying, yeah, I'm supposed to meet up with her.
But it wasn't a thing back then. That's the thing. Catfishing wasn't even a thing back then. You didn't even know
there was no name to it.
Is somebody catfishing me?
Yeah, there was no name to it. Yeah. And I just remember, and when she finally let the cat out of the bag that, like, all right, I need to be honest with you, it was just because she had run out of lies and excuses for not wanting to meet up. And I remember he just saw the picture and said, oh, yeah, that's not you. All right, take care. And he was like, I'm moving on now. But we talked about it afterwards. It's such a bizarre, weird thing to do that you create an entire fake profile, a fake sexual orientation, all of it, just to try and get close enough to somebody, but not close enough to where they find out who you are. It's just the whole psychological thing is weird, and yeah, he got screwed because of it. Lost millions of dollars and all that. But I just I don't know. I wish you would have come clean at some point and let everybody know, like, hey, this isn't exactly on the up and up.
We kind of did, but the problem is like no one believed him because they didn't have the other side of the story and the understanding as to why. I think when you first tune into the documentary, that first episode, you go, oh, okay, like this was like there was a lot going on here, and that's what makes it that's what makes it really intriguing. And you're kind of and like as they play it out, and as you hear because you sit there and like I think the one thing that makes it so impactful, and I'm sure like so many people have reached out to him, is there's so many people who probably sat like for a second in his shoes. I thought they did a great job of portraying it from his lens of what happened, and then you kind of go, dang, that could have happened to me.
It makes way too much sense is what I'll say. There's not one moment where I sat there, like Jonas said, and put my vow. In fact, I had an entire orchestra by the time I got to the bruh, I got choked up watching the joint. I got choked up, and I was like, I was explaining this to my kids because I was like, it could take you a lifetime to build your reputation.
You were saying that Renaya inspired you in a lot of ways.
No,
right?
Not at all.
Yeah, okay.
And it takes a second to ruin it all, right? A second of misjudgment to ruin it all. I said, you look at Manti Te'o. Manti Te'o said one of the things that, like, one of the most, like, it would be devastating to me. They once said, there's Manti Te'o. Now they say, there's Manti Te'o.
Right.
Like you go from being the hero of the mass proportion that he represented. He was such a big brand. He represented like the Polynesian culture. He represented people from Hawaii. Like there were so many people that were all in on Manti Te'o. Like, absolutely loved him.
His decision to go to Notre Dame, I thought, was fascinating.
His decision to stay at Notre Dame was fascinating.
Yeah.
Him making it to a national title is the whole thing is storybook for a career.
Talking about coming from Hawaii and then he's in South Bend and he's like, uh-oh.
I feel for him though, man, because he's still dealing with it.
Yeah,
he's still dealing with that.
Although I'll say this. Doing all right.
Oh, I mean, well,
definitely didn't. Here we go.
Hey, man.
Hey, man.
Just say he's doing
okay.
Man.
He didn't do bad.
Hey, man.
Yeah. He's doing okay.
He didn't do bad.
All right.
Jonas.
Being truthful here.
He didn't do bad.
All right. And my eyes work. I'm not going to apologize at all.